Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Kay Andrews. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm coming to you live from the Sky Club at Terminal E at the Atlanta airport. So if you see people walking behind me, or there is a popcorn machine near me, so forgive the distraction.
And I'm Kristin Harmel, and I'm just coming to you from my boring old house, and I'm a little bit jealous of the proximity of the popcorn machine. That sounds really fabulous right now.
Well, you know, the popcorn machine is one thing, but there are brownies at the buffet, and I'm not near them.
Oh, come on. Now you're killing me.
Tragically, yeah. Okay, yeah. This is Friends and Fiction for New York Times bestselling authors. Endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians.
Yeah. If you're not with us already, we hope you'll join our Facebook group, which is more than 250,000 members strong. We'd also like to invite you to follow us on our Instagram and YouTube, and to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, which is full of awesome bonus content. You can find out more about our community and everything we offer at friendsandfiction.com.
Now, with so many exciting things going on in our community, I want to remind you that our live and in-person events, we had a total blast at our most recent one, which was in Atlanta, celebrating the publication of Patti's new book, The Story She Left Behind. Be sure to mark your calendars, because we have 2 more of these live in-person events coming up this summer. On Friday, May 30th, we'll all be together in Myrtle Beach to celebrate Kristy's launch of Beach House Rules with Litchfield Books. Then on Tuesday, June 17th, we will all be together again at the Jersey Shore to celebrate Kristin's The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau, for an event hosted by Booktown at the Algonquin Theater in Manasquan. Stay tuned for details on both of those upcoming events, because you're going to want to jump on those ticket sales.
You know, it's funny. I feel like everything going on behind you is just so symbolic of like just what an author's book tour looks like, right? Like this is tour 101. So we're really giving readers and listeners the inside scoop. But
wow.
On this, So on this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Jasmine Guillory to discuss her new novel, Flirting Lessons, which was just released on April 8th.
Now let's give you a bit of background on Jasmine. She is a New York Times bestselling author of 9 novels, including The Wedding Date and the Reese's Book Club selection, The Proposal. She's been a Today Show favorite with 18 appearances and counting to recommend upcoming novels to the Today Show audience.
I watch the Today Show every morning. I love seeing her. It's always so much fun when she's on. Her work has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Cosmopolitan, Bon Appetit, and Time. Jasmine is also a frequent book contributor. Oh, we said this already on the Today Show. She lives in Oakland, California. And in fact, she and I share an agent named Holly Root, who is fantastic. I think Jasmine and I both agree that Holly is the best. So Jasmine's new novel, Flirting Lessons, was just released on April 8th. And it is a fun and captivating queer romance. Bestselling author Taylor Jenkins Reid said Flirting Lessons is Jasmine Guillory at her best. Absolutely one of the most fun rom-coms of the year. And Booklist said Guillory's sexy, sweet, opposites attract, friends to lovers romance, enriched with found family vibes, is an absolute delight.
Sean, can you bring Jasmine on?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Also, I love what you said about the background at the airport sort of being like it is for an author on tour, because I remember at one point during the pandemic, like I had a book come out in June of 2020, and I so missed like meeting readers and going on tour and having events. And I remember thinking like, when this is all over, I am going to appreciate every moment, even those times when I'm stuck in the Atlanta airport. So So yes, it does.
Perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we've all had those moments of being stuck in the Atlanta airport.
That is so true.
We've all done interviews and podcasts from weird places, from bookstore back rooms
Yes.
and restaurants. I don't even know all the places we've done these.
And hotel rooms, like where you can't quite get the bed out of frame. So you're like, this doesn't look quite right. Yeah.
Well, also, like, when I wrote my first 3 books, I was still working a full-time day job. And there was one point when I was like, shut myself in a closet at work to do a podcast so that like the sound would work and I wouldn't have people walking in and out. So yes, things like that. Exactly.
That's awesome. I think people think the life of an author is so glamorous. It's like the real.
Yes, exactly. This is the real behind the scenes. Currently my dog is barking her head off in the other room. So
I've got people having some kind of a business meeting behind me, so I don't know what to do about that.
At least there's popcorn. Mary
yes,
Kay.
exactly.
There is popcorn. Jasmine, welcome back to Friends in Fiction. We're so glad to have you here with us. I think we first met years ago at the Decatur Book Festival.
Yeah, so I remember meeting you then. That was so much fun.
I fangirled after your SRO talk. And that was probably when Wedding Date debuted, right?
Let's see. I think maybe that might have been, that was either in 2018 or 2019. So, yeah.
And then you were one of our first ever guests on the show in 2020, back in our really super tech challenge days.
Yes. We were just muddling our way through the technology at that point.
That's all right.
Exactly.
So, let's get right into Flirting Lessons. Tell us what this book is about. Great title, by the way.
Thank you.
Total title jealousy here. Tell us what it's about, and then what's it really about? And I'll put myself on mute.
So Flirting Lessons is about Avery and Taylor. Avery is kind of buttoned up. She's a event planner and is always very organized, and kind of never wants to make a wrong move. But she realizes that she has maybe done too much of that in her life. She's always been, done everything right. And she feels like her life is a little boring. She's coming off of a big breakup, and she confesses early in the book to Taylor, who she's known a little bit, but doesn't really know well, that she wants to kind of do more unpredictable things in her life. She wants to make new friends. She wants to flirt with people, but she doesn't really know how. And Taylor says, oh, well, I mean, I know how to do all of those things. I can teach you how to flirt. So they embark on a series of flirting lessons. And, what's funny about the title is that at one point, relatively early, like I had a draft, but I was still revising it. And I was talking to a writer friend of mine about how I didn't really have a title and I was still trying to figure it out. And she was like, well, tell me about the book. And I told her, and she was like, why not just have the title be Flirting Lessons? And I was like, yes, there you go.
Oh,
Thank
brilliant.
you. Sometimes you need someone else to tell you.
It's so true. I feel like we workshop a lot of stuff, right, Kathy? Or right, Mary Kay? We workshop a lot of stuff. The 4 of us, friends and fiction authors. I don't think in the time since we've been together have we all by ourselves come up with anything. It's like a team group brain effort.
Yes, exactly. Most of my titles have come from brainstorming with other writers or other publishing people. So yes.
That is the best. It's best to put all the everyone's thinking caps on. What is the book really about, Jasmine, would you say?
I think one of the core themes of this book for me is about how it's okay to be a late bloomer in whatever way that is. Both Avery and Taylor are late bloomers in different kinds of ways, and they both feel bad about it and feel like they're not where they thought they should be, and they feel behind their friends or behind what other people envision for them and how they need to catch up. And I just I want people to know that it's okay. You don't have to catch up. You can be where you are in life and figure yourself out, because I think we all, no matter where you are in your life, there's always something that you think is wrong with it. And that's not what people see when they look at you. And also it's okay to learn something new at your age, whether you're, 25 or 35 or, almost 70, like, or later, like my mom is in her 70s and she's learning something new all the time. And I think we always feel like there's always a point where you think like, well, I'm grown up now. Shouldn't I have done this or that? And it's fun and exciting to learn new things. And it's also terrifying at the same time. And I think that,
right.
It's okay to accept kind of all of that.
I really like that message. So there's a question that's probably on a lot of your fans' minds. So you've written rom-coms since 2018, but this year with Flirting Lessons, you've given us what New York Times bestselling author Kennedy Ryan calls sapphic rom-com perfection, and which I love that, and which your publisher calls a captivating and sizzling new queer romance. Can you talk to us about what inspired the shift to a romance focusing on two women?
Yeah. I had wanted to write a romance about two women for quite a while, but part of it was like I sort of had, once you've been in publishing for a while, you kind of had books lined up. And so you have to sort of get through those other books, or you're already in the middle of a book when you have an idea and you think like, okay, I'm going to write that down and get to that when I can get to it. And so I had, kind of the germ of this story in my head for years. And then when Taylor and Avery are both characters in my last book, Drunk on Love, and when I wrote them both on the page, I realized like, oh, this is perfect. These two are just right for each other, because I love the kind of writing an opposites attract story. I think it's really fun to think about how they will clash with each other, but also what the things in the other will attract one another, right? And what they like look up to in one another, what they are like, that's so cool that she does that because I don't know how to do that. And they each kind of feel that way about one another. And so I kind of knew when I wrote that book, like this will be my next one. And so it was really exciting to finally get to dive in and write their story.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, now you have set most of your books in California, and you live in California, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about this dreamy Napa Valley setting for Flirting Lessons. Had you always wanted to set a book there?
Maybe not always, but I think it was really like I spent a lot of time during the pandemic going up to Napa, partly because it was, I live about an hour away. So it was a good, like, little day trip, a good little escape. A lot of wineries can have outside, places to drink wine anyway, and many of them could still be open because of, they were making wine. They could still, like, once restaurants could be open, they could. And so, my mom or like close friends and I would go up to Napa for the day and get to kind of like sit outside and relax and like have some outside interaction. And so that's really when I started thinking about it. And I spent a lot of time like asking a lot of questions to people who worked there, which I think really like started giving me ideas about, what is the background of the people who work at these wineries or who live in this area? Because it's just an hour away from me. I've, have been there many times in my life, but like really kind of thinking about it from a writer's point of view was different. And so I like started asking questions and making notes and paying attention to the different kinds of wineries, right? Because there's like big, huge ones, there's small family ones, and kind of everything in between. And what their procedures are. Do they have lots of visitors or not? And so I started really thinking about that. And it's such a beautiful place, which made for a very fun, like thinking about, because, a lot of the things, the specific places in the book are imaginary, but they're in real towns. And I kind of pictured them on real streets. And I thought about like how you would drive from this place to that. And so it really made it feel like I was kind of putting everything in a very specific place for me.
I'm sorry. I have to ask, do you have a favorite winery to visit in Napa?
Oh, I have a number of favorite wineries to visit in Napa. I actually, at one point, I made a whole spreadsheet of like wineries that I had visited.
Jasmine, why are we not already best friends?
I know.
It feels like a missed opportunity.
I love Brown Winery. They are, they're a family-owned winery in Napa Valley. They have a great tasting room, right in downtown Napa. And it's so much, like, they have great wines, and also going to the tasting room is so much fun because you learn so much about the wines. They'll tell you about like what other wineries there are. I feel like one of the things that I really love about Napa Valley, and that I tried to show in the book, is that it is kind of it is kind of a small town. It is like a lot of the, there's a bunch of cities in it, but like they're all close. People know each other. People have bounced from different jobs, around and work in different places. And so many times when I have gone up there, I will like go to one winery and then ask, do you have suggestions of other places to go? And so I have learned about so many different places through talking to people in Napa about like where their favorite restaurants are, what other wineries we should stop at. They'll like give me their card and say like, tell them I sent you, and those are the kind of like connections and just like community feeling that I wanted to get across in the book.
That's awesome.
I think you really accomplished that.
Yeah.
One of the best trips my husband and I ever had was a book thing, and he went with me, and we ended up in Napa, and we asked somebody where to go eat that night, and they said, "Oh, go to Mustard's Grill." And we went, and it just happened. And someone said to us, that's where all the, I guess the Domaine Chandon.
Yeah, it's right near there. Yeah.
People, they're like, those guys hang out there. So we were sitting at the bar waiting on a table and struck up a conversation with a winemaker.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's often how it happens in Napa Valley. I've been to Mustard's Grill, and it's one of the classic Napa Valley places. And great, people will, and they'll there'll be people having a big dinner, and they're each bringing wine from their winery to share. And it's just like a lovely community to kind of, be a little bit of a part of.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Now you took longer than usual break in between books before writing Flirting Lessons. What was that about? Were you anxious about tackling your first queer romance, or were you just having so much fun writing it and drinking wine that you decided to savor the process?
Yeah, this is my first book in 2.5 years. And it was mostly because I had been writing. My first book came out in 2018. And I started writing that book, a few years before that. And I've basically been writing books, especially, during the pandemic. I wrote 3 books back to back to back. And I kind of hit burnout. I just realized at one point I had the idea for this book in my head, but I couldn't get past anything. I knew kind of what the beginning would be. And then I was like, what else happens? I don't know. I just had no creativity there. And my wonderful agent, who Kristin and I share, told me, you need a break. Stop thinking about writing for a while. And then I did, and I let myself, relax. I got a dog. I went for lots of walks with her, and slowly it let my creativity come back, and I kind of learned to love writing again, which was great. But it was kind of good to know that both my publishing team would be okay if I took a break, and to know when I had to give myself a break, and that my creativity would come back. Because at one point I thought, maybe I'm just done. Maybe I don't know how to write anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think is when my agent told me, okay, take a deep breath and don't even try for a while. And when I came back to it, I remembered, oh, right, I like this. I started writing because it was fun to me, and it became fun again when I wrote Flirting Lessons.
Jasmine, I hit that wall about 2 years ago, where I also needed to take a break, and where I also had that same question, do I even know how to do this anymore? Have I or have I kind of lost the touch? So I identify with what you're saying, but it's occurring to me that Holly must have felt very concerned, because if clients were dropping off one by one, like, I can't write anymore.
Well, I mean, I also think that she recognized what was happening.
Yes.
Like, oh, this has been a very hard time for many people. We don't need to put that pressure on ourselves. Yep. Like, it is okay to take a deep breath and take breaks. And this is a conversation that I've had with a number of writers that, and especially I think that was such a hard time, and I reacted to it just by working a lot. And I was sort of like, what else am I going to do? I'm just going to keep writing. And usually I would kind of give myself breaks in between books and go on vacation and hang out with friends. And because I couldn't really do all of that, I was just like, all right, on to the next one. And now I know that I first of all, I need to take those breaks. But also sometimes you have to like think about difficult things and not just throw yourself into work, which is definitely what I was doing.
Right.
I mean, I'm not having a book this summer for the first time in, I can't even tell you how many years. I've been a book a year gal for decades. And last year, after Summers at the Saint came out, my agent and my editor kind of said, "Hey, do you want to take a year off?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah. And, I had this conversation with another very prolific writer friend. And I said, after I said I was taking a break, and I said to her, no one's gonna give you permission. You have to just take it. And she has since repeated that back to me. And she said, I told other people, Jasmine told me, no one's gonna give you permissions. You just have to take it. And I think that is one of the hard things to learn in this job, because you do feel like you have to keep going and have to keep going. And so and then when I came back to it, I was so excited and happy to come back to it.
Yep.
And I think that, for a while, I definitely kind of thought of writing as something difficult and overwhelming. And so it's nice to come back to it and be excited about it again.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned before that idea of never being too old to learn new things. And this is an important new thing to learn, that, that you have to give yourself a break sometimes, and that is sometimes the only way to stay sane and move forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is funny to me because I feel like in general, I'm a person who I would have told you, I know how to relax. I can take breaks.
Yep.
But then when it came to my career, I was like, well, no, but I can't, because, and it did take some convincing and realizing that I just couldn't, I had sort of thought of writer's block as kind of an imaginary thing that you can push through. And sometimes it just isn't. You just have to take a deep breath and let yourself, hold, stay for a little while, and it's okay.
You are absolutely right. All right. Now, switching tracks a little bit, you have said that publishing a novel with a bisexual heroine, especially one who's exploring her romantic prospects with women, feels essential right now. Can you share with us why you feel this representation is so important?
Yeah, I think, this is I think people who are either coming out late in life or who are kind of exploring new things late in life. I think that part of it goes back to what I was saying earlier about trying new things. And I also feel late in life, right? Avery is only 29. She's not that old, but I think that it is hard. At every age, you think of yourself as I'm too old to, right? And so I remember being that age and thinking oh, well, I'm 29. That is so old, which now I look back on and think what were you even thinking? But I think we all have those feelings in our heads, that there's always a point when you're too old to do something. And that, you're never too old. It's never too late. And that's, I think, one thing that I really wanted to think about in this book. And especially, there's a difficult political climate right now for, for queer people, for people of color, for women in general. And so this felt like something like some hope for me to write and to kind of throw out into the universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now more about those characters in Flirting Lessons. Avery, as you mentioned, is very buttoned up, put together, just a little set in her ways. But Taylor is an extrovert with lots of friends and partners and she doesn't seem to have her life quite together. Was there anything in particular that inspired Avery and Taylor? And did you have as much fun writing those characters as we've had reading them?
Oh, well, I'm so glad that you had fun reading them. I did have a lot of fun writing them. I think, one like small thing that inspired a little bit about Taylor was that years ago, I mean, and this shows, right, how like the beginning of an idea can start long before I started writing the book. Years ago, I was in a car with two friends and they were talking about someone that they knew in common but that I didn't know. And one person said like, oh, well, she's broken a lot of hearts about this person. And I wrote, and I remember I pulled out my phone and wrote that down because I thought like, that would be a fun character to write. Like, who is that person who has broken a lot of hearts? How does that feel for her? Because, right, like other people are saying that about her. How does that feel for her? And then what happens when she falls for someone? Like, how is that, what would that story look like? And so that was sort of the very beginning of the idea of Taylor. And then thinking like, who would be just the right person for her? And so when I then had the character of Avery on the page in Drunk on Love, I thought like, yes, exactly, these two. So it was kind of very fun to build the rest of their character beyond those little bits at the beginning that I thought of, and then think how would they come together? Like, what would their romance be like?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it seemed like the chemistry was so good on the page. It just must have been fun to roll through that, to be working on that and hearing them kind of come alive in your head.
It really was. And like one of the most fun things I did, I brainstormed a lot of like what the flirting lessons would be and where they would go and what they would do. So it was really fun to kind of write that and think about, what each of them would think about different locations and why Taylor would come up with specific things. Yeah. And so that was also very fun for me.
Oh, I bet it was. All right. Let's talk a little bit about your career path. So we've read that you always wanted to be a lawyer, and after Stanford Law School, you worked on securities law and intellectual property. So initially, I believe, you started writing as a hobby to give yourself a creative outlet. So tell us, when did you first decide you wanted to try to get your first book published?
So the first book that I wrote has never been published.
Okay.
But I started writing for that exact reason, to like see if I liked it. Because I've always loved reading. Okay. And so I thought like maybe I would like writing too. I guess we'll see. And then I just loved it. And so I wrote a book. And then at that point, when I got kind of deep into it and I kept writing, I thought, well, like, maybe I can't, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can publish this book. And so I had some writer friends. And so I kind of asked them some questions and did a bunch of research, and reached out to a lot of agents, and then got a lot of like very kind rejections from agents, very like supportive rejections, which was nice, but I still didn't get an agent with that book. But it did teach me what the process was like and like how to do it, and also sort of how to do it without, because it's like I think part of writing, a part of publishing is rejection. Like you're getting rejections over and over again.
Yep.
All the time. Like even still now, we are constantly getting rejections, right?
Yep.
And so it sort of taught me partly how to deal with that a little bit. And then I just sort of, I took a deep breath, and then after a while kept going. And so eventually I wrote The Wedding Date, and then did a bunch of research on agents, and sent out a bunch of query letters to agents. And then that was the book that got me my agent and my first publishing deal.
I love that. Now, what draws you to romance as a genre?
I started reading a lot of romance when I was going through a really hard time in my life. And I realized that romance is so comforting then, because no matter what happens in the book, even whether or not like it's, because there's so many kinds of romance, right? You can have a very cozy romance. You can have a like romantic thriller. You can have kind of everything in between. But like, if it is billed as romance, that at the end there's going to be a happy ending.
Yep.
And I really needed that at that time. And that, like, it was very helpful for me to be able to open a book and know everything is going to be okay at the end. And sometimes, like in hard times, we really need everything is going to be okay kind of feeling. And so when I started reading a lot of romance, I remember thinking like, fun to read. I wonder if it would be fun to write. Turns out it really is.
Oh, that's awesome. At what point did you feel like you could leave your career as a lawyer?
That was very much purely a financial decision.
Okay.
It was really like at the point when I thought, can I support myself at least for the next like few years doing this writing thing? And and also there's a point where it got harder to do both, right? Because when I was just writing and working full time, it was much easier to do both than when I was, doing a lot of book promotion and marketing and traveling for writing, for book tour and all of that kind of stuff. Like that makes it a lot harder to juggle everything. So, so there was a point when it just got kind of easier to support myself and much harder to kind of juggle everything.
Yep, that makes sense.
Now, in addition to your romance novels, you also co-write a fiercely funny series of Amazon original short stories with Emmy Award-winning actress, singer, writer Kiki Palmer. I should tell you, my grandma name is Kiki. Called Southern Belle Insults. You've also contributed to the essay anthology Black Love Matters, and you've co-created First Street, an original audio drama about recent law school graduates clerking for the Supreme Court. Talk to us about flexing all these creative muscles. Essays, short stories, and fiction podcasts. Do you have a favorite? Or do you think all of this just fuels the machine that is Jasmine Guillory?
I think at core, my favorite really is writing novels. But the fun thing about kind of doing the other stuff is collaborating with other people, because that isn't something like, as you guys have found out through doing Friends of Fiction together, like writing can be a very solitary thing, and having some collaboration, like talking back and forth with other writers about ideas and kind of figuring out how to put something on the page that represents all of those ideas and works for everyone is flexing a really fun muscle that we don't get to do a lot of times, and that can be really fun. So I think at core, I will always go back to writing novels, but I do really enjoy doing all of the other stuff too.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So your character Taylor gives Avery a graduate class in flirting throughout the course of the book's action. And I think that for some of us, the act of flirting seems like something that should be instinctive, should be effortless. But for Avery, like lots of folks, that is maybe not the case. So Jasmine, can you break it down for us? Can you share your flirting essentials?
Yes. I think one of the keys is to and one of the things that Taylor says to Avery is you want the other person to know that you are flirting with them.
Okay.
Right? Like make eye contact with them. Smile at them. People want to flirt with someone who seems friendly. Ask them questions and pay attention to how they answer you. Like respond in a way that makes it clear to them that you are paying attention to them. Remember their name and keep saying it, because I think that's a little thing, right? Because it's so easy to hear a name once and let it float away. And so to when they say their name, repeat it back to them, things like that can be really, like make people feel really flattered and are not like something that a lot of people do. And I think like those feel like a lot of little things, but together they all kind of work to kind of let someone else know that you might be interested.
I love
and
that.
I feel like that's also the scary thing about it, right? Because people feel, I mean, kind of back to the rejection part, people feel like, well, but if I let them know, then what if they don't like me? And I think that's one of the hard things. And then, you know, it's okay. It's like, sometimes it's okay. If someone is not interested in you, you just on to the next one. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? And you haven't lost anything by being friendly and engaging and listening, right?
Exactly.
Like, so I think sometimes you think you're risking something, but it's not high risk to just be a good, interested, engaging person.
I feel like one of the, like, when you're asking someone questions and listening to the answers, there's always something interesting that you learn, you know, whether it's about yourself or someone else. And I think one of the other things that Taylor says to Avery is like, only flirt with someone you want to flirt with. Like, if they are not interesting to you, then that's your answer. That's okay. You don't have to keep going. And like, that's also you saying, I don't want to keep, you know, if they reject you, well, that's okay. You don't want to keep talking to them anyway. So I think you're learning about yourself and who you want to talk to and who you're interested in. And like, we all need to learn that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jasmine. I want to ask you if you think there's a through line in your novels, but I already think there is. I mean, to me, they're romance, but I think the Jasmine Guillory chef's kiss, if you will, is self-love and self-acceptance. Or is that just me putting that on you?
I love that you say that. That feels like such a compliment. So thank you. I'm going to steal that and use it. I would have said, like, at one point I said to a friend, you know, all of my romances are kind of secretly family stories. Cause I think that I think one of the core things about my books is they are romances, yes, but they're also about like you know, the relationships you have with your family and your friends, who in many ways your friends are like family. Because I feel like friendship also plays a really large part in all of my books, partly because friendship plays a really large part in my life. And that's something that I reflect in my books, sometimes on purpose and then sometimes accidentally.
Yeah.
Okay, Jasmine, if you will stick around, we have more to talk to you about. But first, a few quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
For all of you watching and listening, we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of Flirting Lessons. So the perfect place to do that is in the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You will not only be getting it at a discount, but all your purchases there support our show, our guests, and independent bookstores nationwide.
And don't forget to visit friendsandfiction.com for details on our show schedule, upcoming in-person events, and links to our award-winning Friends and Fiction Book Club with Brenda and Lisa, our merch store, and our Substack newsletter sign up.
Speaking of Substack, you can read all our free weekly posts on the Substack website or app, or subscribe for free to get them directly in your inbox. And if you upgrade to our paid Substack, which costs just $5 a month, you'll have access to deeper dives with all our weekly show guests like Jasmine, plus monthly roundtable discussions like the super fun one MKA over there just did about rom-coms, plus bonus Q&As with additional authors like the recent ones we ran with Renee Rosen, Lisa Unger, and Chris Bojalian. If you enjoy tuning in for our weekly author interviews, this is a big way you can support us for just about $1 each week. Check us out at friendsandfiction.substack.com.
Now, Jasmine, we see you have a pretty big tour planned for Flirting Lessons. Where can everybody watching catch up with you on the road?
Well, later this week, I'm going to be in Seattle, doing an event at a Barnes & Noble there. And check my website for the details and you can get a ticket there. And then this weekend, I will be at the LA Festival of Books, which is one of my favorite book events of the year. There are so many great panels to go to with other authors. Like, I always get excited about going just to fangirl over other authors. And so I'll be doing a panel there, but also signings at a few different booths. So I'm really excited to meet readers there.
Oh, that's awesome. So people will have some great opportunities to catch you on the road. So Jasmine, before we let you go, will you tell our community how to connect with you online? We especially love your Instagram because puppy pics.
Yes.
And your Substack because recipes. So how can everyone watching and listening get in on all the Jasmine Guillory fun?
I am on Instagram, as you said, at Jasmine Pics. And yes, I post many pictures of my dog on both my stories and my feed. Recently I posted a video of her howling, which she does when, sirens go by, which is always really funny to me. And my Substack is, Jasmine Guillory. And then you can check my website, where I'll have links to like all of the events that I do and when I'll post when new books comes out.
Perfect.
Okay, Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure talking with you and catching up. And thanks for being with all of us on the Friends in Fiction show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to talk to you.
We loved it.
Okay, everybody, be sure to tune in next week when Kristy and Patti will welcome Carly Fortune to discuss her new novel, One Golden Summer. That show will air on the Friends in Fiction Facebook page and the YouTube channel on Wednesday, April 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it'll be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, May 2nd.
Thanks to all of you out there for being with us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.